Hello, people, and welcome to the show. It is Monday night, and today's show we're going to be talking about Joe Biden's first, not quite full week as President of the United States, and what can we prognosticate from what we have seen already. The second thing we're going to talk about is, do we really have control of the Senate? Did we actually win it? Because there's some very serious questions to be asked about that. And then instead of doing Q&A tonight, I decided that I would really like to talk about some of the key races that are coming up. We have some special elections that are happening because of vacancies in the House, and we have some really interesting Senate matchups that are coming up that I want to chat a little bit about so that you guys can get primed for the races that you should be paying attention to. So, without further ado, let us talk about Joe Biden's first half week or so. He really got to work, even though the inauguration was on Wednesday, and he did get to work Wednesday afternoon, and there were serious movement even on Wednesday, and we're not quite a week into his presidency. The first approval poll that on his presidency came out today, and he has got a 63% approval rating. Now, it's the honeymoon period. I do get that. But that's still more than 14 points higher than Donald Trump ever had at any point in his presidency, and that says a lot. I think even though Joe Biden has been extremely activist in his use of executive orders, he's been setting to right things that people weren't comfortable with to begin with. Also, just that sense of normalcy coming back to the White House, coming back to the briefing room, the press room, coming back to science, listening to Anthony Fauci basically glowing and just giddy with excitement because he has a team to work with who believes in science, can be driven by science. He cannot wait to get back into the global community to talk about containing COVID as an international priority and not just, America first or America alone, which is really what that means. And so I think Americans have been over the moon with what they've seen with Joe Biden. I think it's a carry on from the transition. His rollout of the cabinet and the key roles in his administration was masterful. These are people that Democrats would be happy with, but also people that centrists and even Republicans would respect, at least as experts with knowledge and ethics. And even though they can't expect them to hold conservative viewpoints, they know that these people are not yahoos and they're not ideologues. They're people who know their stuff and are going to represent the United States very well. There's some folks like me and progressives that were a little bit disappointed. We wanted to see a little bit more progressive voice. But then again, we saw a lot of diversity in that transition and cabinet appointment and some nods to some very key and important injustices and slights that Joe was sort of subtly correcting. The one that jumps to the front of my mind is appointing Deb Haaland, Congresswoman Haaland, as the first Secretary of the Interior who is from one of the indigenous tribes, First Nations. And it's the first time ever that the person responsible for federal lands and the relationship with the tribes and the reservations is a person of indigenous background. And I think that's phenomenal. I think it's fantastic. I think she's going to do a great job one way or another, but I also think that it's such a nod to say, hey, you have a stake. Native tribes have a stake and have a voice and have a representation in these critical decisions that have always been made not to their benefit. And so I'm looking forward to Deb stepping in and changing that course and moving in a different direction that respects Native rights and their territorial sovereignty. And I just really am excited about that. In addition to that, I think people are seeing just a tone out of the Biden administration that isn't about grievance, right? It's about governance. And I think that is the biggest way in which the Biden team is moving differently than the Trump team. I mean, remember Sean Spicer's first interaction with the American people was grievance over the reporting on the inauguration crowd size. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember this. It was like so dystopian and scary and hostile. It was like the SNL version of that. Melissa McCarthy did a send-up of it that is just absolutely epic and classic. But Jen Psaki comes out and says, hey guys, glad you're here. We're going to be transparent. We're going to have smart, fact-based, transparent, communication. We're not always going to agree, but, we're not going to use this as a place to yell at you and lie to you. Right? And everybody was like, oh my God, how refreshing. And I'm like, isn't that a sad statement about the Trump administration? And so Sean Spicer, by the way, was the best of the press secretaries in Trump's administration. He was followed by Sarah Huckabee, Queen Liar. And then it got worse from there. For a while, there was a press secretary who held no press briefings at all, right? And then we ended up with Kayleigh McEnany, who was like I said, the master of word bullets, just saying whatever she felt she needed to say to win the interaction in the moment, it being utterly disconnected from reality. Right? And everything is the grievance. How dare you ask me this? How unfair of you to say so. Well, you are. And it's so funny because just yesterday, Megyn Kelly wrote something about how unfair the press was to Donald Trump. And I kept thinking to myself, first of all, who the hell is she? But second of all, the unfairness, like the man was a constant liar. If there was any error on the part of media, it was giving his lies the same weight as the truth, because it's the right perspective. And we need to balance the right perspective with the left perspective, not owning that it's just wrong. Right? So if anything, the press didn't know how to handle Donald Trump, and they treated him as a legitimate broker of fact, when in fact we all know he was just a constant, incessant liar, and he bullied everybody around him to back up his lies because he would tolerate absolutely no deviation from his lies. Right? If any person didn't back up his lies, they would be viewed as disloyal and moved out. So what you see from Joe Biden early in this process is that he's not looking for yes men and sycophants and people who are just going to echo his lies. Right? He wants a team that echoes his values, right? That he wants people who are expert, who are negotiators, who are thoughtful, who are working on behalf of all of the American people. He is not looking for grandstanders. He is not looking for self-interest. He's not looking for people that are going to be derisive and condescending, right? And attacking. That's not his style, and he's not tolerating that in his team. That's the only thing you need to be on Joe Biden's team, is competent and decent. And we're good with that. America's good with that. Now, do I think his approval rating is going to stay at 63%? Probably not. But I also think that if he really does get the vaccine out in any serious kind of way, I think Americans are going to start to appreciate what it means to have a government again, right? Jen Psaki today called out Ron DeSantis in the most tactful kind of way. DeSantis was his typical a-hole self saying, I don't need the help of FEMA to get the vaccine out. And Psaki was like, well, since you've only administered 50% of the vaccine that you've gotten, we're going to keep an eye on the situation and hopefully that will improve. Which is a kind way of saying, dude, you suck. And if you keep sucking, we're coming in. I love that. Because she said it in such a nice and tactful way. But what she really meant was, you're underperforming. And we're not going to just keep letting you underperform. So get it together or we're coming in. That's what she really meant. But she didn't say it that way, which is why I'm smiling, because I love shade that is just a little bit short of shade, right? Because I just go all in. That's not my style. My style is like, I'm going to just shade you straight up. But she's a press secretary and I'm not. I'm a pundit, right? So, but I just think it's fantastic to have somebody in the White House who will check someone like Ron DeSantis. And I think that's fantastic. So, first, and then, it's just been this cascade of positive, beautiful things, right? It was the transgender ban, gone. Thank you, Jesus. The Muslim travel ban, gone. Thank you, Jesus. The separation of children, addressed. Thank you, Jesus. Today it was Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. Thank you, Jesus. It's just all these things, one after another, that just delight me. They just make me so happy because it just feels like goodness is back. And all of the ugliness and the discrimination and callous disregard and heartlessness of the Trump administration has been swept on out. And that makes me feel really good. But there's still a couple really big ticket items on the list. And top of the list for me is Louis DeJoy. He has got to go. He's got to go. And what he did to the post office was an absolute abomination, and he has got to go. So I'm going to keep pushing that, and I hope that Team Biden is listening. You will get nothing but praise from the American people for getting rid of that clown. So enough about that. Joe's first grade, A+. Way to go. Keep it up, and let's do this thing. If you like what you just heard, you can find out so much more and hear so much more on my Patreon channel, patreon.com/Pam Keith FL. That's where you hear the rest of this discussion, and there's lots more to share.